Hello and welcome, dear friends, in new lecture of our course, Health and Safety Management System. We are with second lecture in Chapter 4, Health and Safety Management Element 3, Planning and Implementation. Last lecture we identified the SMART objectives and how it should be. And today we are going to learn about a very important point in Health and Safety Management System, which is the risk assessment. Actually, risk assessment is a process that people do automatically all the time. When you cross the road, you can carry out a risk assessment, and when you drive a car, you carry out a risk assessment, and when you boil a kettle, you carry out a risk assessment. But of course, this assessment is normally done very quickly and without conscious thought of effort. And if you are not very good at this process, then you will not live long. So, in the workplace, the risk assessment is simply an extension of this automatic self-preservation mechanism. So it's the process of identifying hazards, assessing the risk arising from these hazards, then you check the existing control measures, and decide if additional controls are needed. And the aim of the risk assessment is to ensure that hazards are eliminated or risks minimized by the correct application of relevant standards. And the objective of the risk assessment are to prevent death and personal injury, also other types of loss incidents, even near misses and ill health incidents, and also the breach of statute law, which might lead to enforcement actions, and the direct and indirect costs that follow on farm accidents. These objectives relate directly to the moral, legal, and the economic argument we discussed in the element 1, the policy. Accident ratios, often referred to as accident triangles, display the relationship between numbers of accidents with different outcomes. Research show that this relation form a triangle, with the most serious outcome being least numerous at the top, and those with proportionally higher numbers but less serious results forming the base. The important message of the accident triangle is that serious outcome accidents tend to happen rarely and randomly, and they are difficult to predict because if they were not, it would be easy to prevent them from happening. Also, near misses incidents, on the other hand, happen far more frequently. As you see, 600 times more frequently according to the triangle. Many near misses will be minor events of little or no consequence. If they happen again, there would be no serious outcome. But some near misses will have the potential for very serious injury. These near misses should be thoroughly investigated and preventive measures put in place. In this way, a serious outcome incident is prevented, and you can also see that a near miss event from the bottom of the triangle, they form the greatest proportion of incidents. And get to know that accident ratio studies are based on statistical ratios. They cannot be used to predict exactly when a certain type of event might occur. For example, just because an organization has had 600 near misses or incidents reported doesn't mean that very next type of event will be a seriously injury accident. That's an oversimplification of the accident triangle. The risk assessments should be carried out by competent people. In this context, the word competent would mean people who have sufficient training, knowledge, and experience and other abilities. The exact training, knowledge, and experience required will vary depending on circumstances. For example, sometimes simply an ability to identify, read, and correctly interpret guidance on a topic is sufficient, and in other time, a detailed understanding of background knowledge is essential to be able to correctly evaluate the risk. But which case is better? To carry out a risk assessment individually or by a team? Actually, a risk assessment can be carried out by one person, but this is not ideal in many instances, since it relies on one person's opinion and judgment. And ideally, risk assessment will be carried out by a team, because this allows various views and opinions to be taken into account, and so many result in a more successful assessment. And this team might include workers familiar with the tasks and areas to be assessed, Also, health and safety specialists, such as the safety practitioners, and the technical specialists, such as mechanical and electrical engineers. Also, line managers, responsible for the task of areas being assessed, and the work safety representative in the workplace. And after the completion of this team, there is one remaining question, which is, what is the criteria to carry out a risk assessment? Actually, a risk assessment should be suitable and sufficient, and in other words, it should be good enough to fulfill legal requirements and prevent foreseeable injuries and ill health from happening. So it should state the name and the competence of the assessor and any additional specialists help obtained in carrying out the assessment. Also, it should identify the significant hazards and risks arising or connected with the work, which are most likely to occur and result in harm being caused. Either identify all those persons who could be at risk, including workers and others such as visitors and vulnerable people, such as young person, as well evaluate the effectiveness of the current controls and identify if other protective measures are required to control the risk to an acceptable level. And all these findings must be recorded. Last thing, that it should state the period of time for which it's likely to remain valid. Well, that's enough for today, and we continue in the next lecture with the risk assessment point still. Thanks for watching and see you next lecture.